Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most peculiar, probably, situations the tech world has at least seen in recent memory, maybe even ever. I really can't think of, at least in my lifetime, anything else that really comes close to this, like the amount of computer systems that were affected, just how widespread this actually ended up affecting things. It wasn't like, a couple 100,000 little PCs were affected here, right? Billions of devices around the planet were basically having problems all at the same time. And, these weren't just, like I said, people's home computers or gaming laptops, right? Even though some of these people were also affected. We're talking about the computer systems that keep up banks and hospitals and cybersecurity firms, things like that. So early this morning, late last night, depending on where you live on planet Earth, there was this massive global tech outage, and when it first started kind of all unraveling, no one really understood what was going on. Everybody's just kind of about-faced as to what's going on. And funny enough, while this is all going on, I'm actually wrapping up my work last night on another video, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm online, I'm using everything, and nothing really happened for me, right? It's kind of weird because they said like billions of computers across the planet might have been affected. There was people's, Windows PCs blue screening out of randomness, and yet nothing happened for me. I don't know if God really wanted me to finish that Boogie 2988 video that's also going up today, or what the deal was with that, but I was basically just sitting here watching as the rest of the tech world just completely folded in on itself. So a global tech outage on Friday crippled industries from travel to finance before services started coming back online after hours of disruption, highlighting the risks of a global shift toward digital interconnected technologies. A software update by global cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike triggered systems problems that grounded flights, forced broadcasters off air, and left customers without access to services such as healthcare or banking. So this was pretty severe, okay? This, like I said, it wasn't like, some of these computer viruses we've seen where it's mostly just like people browsing the web accidentally click the wrong link. Next thing you know, their computer doesn't work. People all around the world doing their jobs or sitting at home, whatever they really had going on, right? They basically were watching as everything just completely fucking unraveled in front of them. I mean, they had to ground thousands of flights in midair over a several-hour period. Sky News and other news and broadcasting agencies in other countries literally couldn't even go on the air, right? They couldn't even fucking go and broadcast the news to people. Banks were just completely crippled for the moment being, hospitals were being crippled for the moment being. They said as this was all going down, there was a massive 911 outage across several US states, including here in Ohio. So this was pretty significant, this wasn't just, oh, somebody shut my computer off. This was the type of shit that, truth be told, if it happened at a different time in the day, it really could have fucked shit up. I mean, at least my time here on the East Coast in the US, right? It was like 2, 3, 4 o'clock a.m. by the time this really started to all go down. So thankfully it didn't hit, I would say, at peak time, rush hour. If this shit happened at 1 p.m., sometime during the afternoon, there could have been, I think, a lot bigger problems on hand, right? Because like I said, 911 outages and shit like that. I mean, people couldn't even reach emergency services if there was an emergency, right? If they were having a medical crisis or were the victims of a violent crime, they couldn't even get a hold of the police in certain places. Banks couldn't even fucking process transactions and couldn't even view bank balances. Cybersecurity firms across the globe were probably scrambling at top speed trying to figure out what was going on. This was basically Y2K, right? If you're too young to really understand the cultural references of what Y2K was, basically, as we reached year 2000 and, the new millennium and whatnot, there was this widespread fear and panic that computer systems weren't going to be able to process the year not basically beginning with a 1, like 1999. And it was going to trip out and short out all the computer systems, and fucking missiles would fly through the sky and planes would crash in the sea. It was supposed to basically be like this tech apocalypse, except this is pretty much it. This is pretty much what that is. Quote, "We're deeply sorry for the impact that we've caused to customers, to travelers, to anyone affected by this, including our company," Kurtz told NBC News' Today program. "Many of the customers are rebooting the system, and it's coming up, and it'll be operational." CrowdStrike shares plunged but paired losses and were down 10.8% as of Friday afternoon. Holy shit. Its rivals were up, with SentinelOne shares gaining 8.8% and Palo Alto Networks up 1.5%. Microsoft was down about 1%. Microsoft's chief communications officer, Frank Shaw, said on Twitter that the company was supporting customers as they recover their systems after the CrowdStrike update brought down, quote, a number of Windows systems globally. I'm struggling to think of an outage at quite this scale, said Ciaran Martin, professor at Oxford University's Blatherwick School of Government and former head of the UK National Cybersecurity Center. US President Joe Biden has been briefed on the outage, a White House official said. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said his understanding was the global tech outage was not a malicious attack. However, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency said it has observed hackers using the outage for phishing and other malicious activities. Even as companies and institutions began restoring regular services, experts said the outage revealed the risks of an increasingly online world. Quote, this event is a reminder of how complex and intertwined our global computing systems are and how vulnerable they are to a mistake and an error, said Gil Luria, senior software analyst at D.A. Davidson. While most companies don't really have an alternative to Microsoft, they do have alternatives for security. So, all right, so, I mean, obviously, with all these different things being affected, all this widespread panic that it was causing in the early hours of the morning and whatnot, right, there had to be some answers, right? There had to be something going on. So we figure out that the whole thing is actually caused by a software update, essentially, right? This fucking CrowdStrike company sent out some sort of, software update, not particularly sure what for, but it goes out and it just completely bricks computers around the world. Microsoft computers completely fucked. I mean, it was even so crazy, like I said, people who weren't even connected to like the banking networks and shit, just like their personal computers, were also getting the blue screen of death. I mean, it's just random. It feels like how it kind of affected certain groups of people. Like I said, random people were just getting blue screened, but yet I didn't, even though I was connected to the internet and using it and whatnot, right? And like the article says, it really starts to show like the downsides to having such an interconnected world, right? It's awesome. Don't get me wrong. The fact that you can get on your computer and you can bank through it and you can fucking, see the doctor through it and they can keep all these records and whatnot on these computers. They obviously perform very critical and important functions, and these networks do as well. But it feels like to a certain degree, humanity has put all of its eggs in one basket when it comes to this, right? Like everything is being done through these computer networks and these computer systems that essentially keeps the entire fabric of society together. And it doesn't even take a bad faith person or like a bad actor, right? It could literally just be one small tiny mistake when you think you're doing the right thing, and next thing you know, the entire world is grinded to a fucking standstill because hospitals don't know what to do with their patients. Banks can't process money going in and out. It's just kind of a fucking very, very psychotic thing to think about because obviously 99.9999% of the time, everything is going smoothly. It's at least working as it should. And, the world is kind of just moving along with it, right? But then there's that 0.0001% of the time, right? Where things are going to inevitably go wrong, regardless if it's, once again, a hacker going in there and fucking with it, or a Chinese spy hacking it from across the planet, or some intern sending out a software update too early, right? It could be a multitude of different things. And really, what can be done? What can the normal average person do in that situation? I mean, what happens when something like this happens and it's not easily resolvable? It's not, oh, let's just revert back to the old, version of the software, or let's issue out this patch real quick, right? What if, God forbid, like I said, a foreign agent decides to attack our infrastructure grid? And next thing you know, power companies in the power grid don't know how to fucking, distribute power because the computers are overwhelmed or whatever, right? Or the water company basically gets hit. Next thing you know, nobody's fucking tap water works. I'm not saying we should go back to, 1845 where everything's written down on paper and we're doing everything on paper, but the idea that basically like 1, 2, maybe 3 companies in the world, if they fuck up at all, it can just cripple the whole planet. That seems like we've become way too overdependent and, way overutilizing this great tech, right? Now, the good news is this company, for what they did, right, this like issued software update that caused all this, they did get hit pretty hard. when it comes to like the fat cats and the people up in the executive chairs and whatnot, right, at these jobs. Usually what it comes down to is, what do the shareholders think? What do the investors in our company think? Their opinions matter more than anyone else's. And I mean, it's pretty hard to argue with a 10% drop in your stock in one day. And I think that's after it rebounded, right? At one point, I'm pretty sure it was down like 15%. So when people are voting with their money like that and they're selling off the shares and whatnot, that obviously incentivizes this company, because this company just lost billions of dollars in one day. The article said it was worth like $85 billion, which that in and of itself is just wild. There's companies out there that are worth tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, and odds are you've probably never even heard their name, and they serve such a critical function, like in keeping things together, that you're just like kind of blissfully unaware of what they do and like how they exist and what's going on, right? But then when something like this happens, at least for them, that's when they become known. For a company like CrowdStrike, you probably don't want to be known, right? You don't want everyone in the world to know what you're doing and like basically what your company's Achilles heel is. But of course, when that moment happens where you fuck up, that's when everybody knows, right? It's kind of like an airliner company or like a parachuting company. If you succeed 99% of the time, that's great. But when that 1% happens, that's what everyone's going to talk about. And that's exactly what's happening here. And they really, like I said, got lucky that this happened at a time of the day where, at least here in the United States, most of the country was pretty dormant. Like, yeah, Asia and Europe and Africa and whatnot, their times are way drastically different than ours. But even then, right, like the fact that it didn't happen here in America with all the stock exchanges open and all this shit going on and like our 911 systems being down in the dead of night, right? Shit could have really been bad had this, number one, been a exposed thing during like a peak time, and B, also, if this was prolonged. Thankfully, this didn't last like, days or weeks or whatever. It was just a couple of hours, but even then, I can't imagine how much money was lost in those couple of hours. I can't imagine, how many people's lives were at risk at these hospitals and with 911 being down and shit, right? It's just kind of scary to think about in all reality. Because we always just, click on our fucking Twitter page like, oh, well, at least it works, this is great, the computer works still. But really, what are we gonna do the day that it just doesn't, right? The day we get a bad solar flare, or the Chinese fucking shut down the power grid, right? What are we all gonna do? Because, like, these are real possible scenarios that we need to be prepared for. And if we don't prepare for them, you see what happens. I don't know, just a really wild, bizarre thing to kind of just come up out of nowhere, right? And watching it all unfold while you're one of the people who just wasn't affected in the slightest by it, it's a very, very odd feeling to just kind of, basically be watching the rest of the entire internet fall apart as the computer network falls apart, right? So anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, talking about the modern day Y2K, and signing out. And that's a wrap on this video, but big shout out to my Optimus Nation supporters. You guys are the real MVPs. For $10 a month, you get access to loads of exclusive videos and archived live streams, my members only Minecraft server where you can possibly appear in gameplay, early access to all new uploads, an invitation to the private Discord, and much more.